Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wonderful day today to fight for justice, and we're going to talk more about that throughout today's show. I want to make sure that I properly introduce myself. I want to make sure I have my camera set up properly, and let me start first with the proper introduction. It goes like this. This is TV Courtroom, hosted by yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America. And today's show is special because we have two powerful, and I do mean powerful, black women who will be serving as the two guests of today's program. The first one will come on in about 10 minutes or so, and that's the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. There's a lot going on in the nation, a lot going on in the Commonwealth, and a lot going on in Philadelphia in connection with ICE. And we need to make sure that our elected officials do what they were elected to do, which is to protect the folks, the citizens, the residents, the visitors in the city and county of Philadelphia, especially when it comes to law enforcement. We've heard District Attorney Larry Krasner make some very important and quite necessary statements about prosecuting anybody who violates the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we also have the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, who, as a law enforcement official, has to make sure that the laws of the city of Philadelphia and the county of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are respected. And that she, just like D. Larry Krasner, made some strong, necessary statements in the interest of justice and lawfulness. And we want to have Sheriff Rochelle Bilal on because there's some rumors on social media that there's some MAGA type backlash to the fact that she's doing the right thing as a law enforcement official. So we want to hear from Sheriff Rochelle Bilal directly. And as I said, she'll be on in about 10, 12 minutes or so. Once we finish that powerful interview, we have another powerful interview, and that's going to be the Honorable Reverend Carolyn Cavaness. And if you know anything about the Black church in America, you got to know about Reverend Carolyn Cavaness. She's the pastor of historic, and I do mean historic, Mother Bethel AME Church. And there's an event coming up within the next couple of weeks, and she's going to be on to talk about that. But before we hear from those two powerful Black women in two powerful and separate segments, let me spend the next several minutes talking about things that are important to me. We all know about ICE, and we know what ICE is doing to not only violate the rights of our brown brothers and sisters who speak Spanish, but you saw just recently they crossed the line. And what I mean by that, we expect white law enforcement officials to attack Black men and Black boys and Black women and Black girls. We expect them to attack brown men and brown women and brown boys and Black and brown girls. We expect that because the system is built on racism. People often say the system is broken. No, the system is not broken. The system is working exactly as it was designed to work. And history proves that based on what they've done to brown people, what they've done to Black people, what they've done to red people, and what they've done to yellow people. So the system is inherently racist. And now, well, let's say now because the guy was elected in November of 2024 and now is the president of the United States of America for basically a full year, a little more than a year. And when I tell you all hell has broken loose, I began to vote, I'd say maybe 35 years ago or so. And I'm familiar based on the history of Republicans like Ronald Reagan. I heard my parents tell me about Richard Nixon. I know about George Bush 1 and George Bush 2. But what we have now in the White House is beyond the pale. It is, I used to say it was creeping fascism. It's no longer creeping fascism. It's fascism in your face. For example, how can you support an insurrection on January 6th, 5 years ago, and encourage people to attack the United States Capitol, encouraged them to attack police officers, and encouraged them to parade around the defaced Capitol with the flag of the Confederacy. Not only is that a betrayal, not only is that a traitor, but it's also promoting slavery. That's what the Confederacy was about. They wanted to continue enslaving my ancestors. So we know the history of the Civil War, North versus the South. North ultimately won, the South lost, but they engaged in insurrection and they engaged in a violation of the fundamental laws of the United States of America. They engaged in treason. But instead of being thrown in prison or lined up in front of a wall, summary execution as they do in the military, instead of doing that, the North, after the Civil War, embraced the South. So that same virulent racism that promoted the enslavement of my ancestors became part of the legislation. Let me drop a little bit of information on you before we get to our guest in a few minutes. We all sing the praises of the 13th Amendment passed in 1865, and to a certain extent, I can understand that. People say that it freed the slaves. Well, not really, because the 13th Amendment does not say slavery is hereby abolished. You can read it. It says slavery is hereby abolished, comma, except following conviction of a crime. Many people think it says slavery is hereby abolished, exclamation point, or slavery is hereby abolished, period. No, it says slavery is hereby abolished, comma, except following conviction for a crime. They then began to create, Congress did, laws that criminalize Black people, laws like curfew violations, laws like vagrancy, laws like not having a job. All those type of laws made you a criminal, and now you were arrested and fined. But these people were just off the plantation. They didn't have a job. They didn't have any money, so they couldn't pay the fine. So what happened? There was something called convict leasing, which means the former plantation owner would now lease the former enslaved Black person to come back to that same plantation, do that same harsh labor. There's a book by a guy named Doug Blackman. Doug Blackman, the title of his book is powerful. It says, Worse Than Slavery. And he makes a persuasive argument that this system of convict leasing after the 13th Amendment passed, which allegedly ended slavery, but it allowed for convict leasing. And now these Blacks were treated worse because during slavery, these so-called slave owners, and I don't like that terminology, but for the purpose of this conversation, I'll use it. Those so-called slave owners had to buy my ancestors, had to pay money for them. So when you buy something, you might not treat it fairly. You certainly won't treat it fairly, but you'll make sure that it's in operating capacity. You buy that car, you might not take care of it perfectly, but you're going to make sure it has gas. You're going to make sure that you check the engine, spark plugs, because that's your thing to help you with your work. Same thing with the horse. You might not like the horse, but you're going to feed the horse because you need the horse to do the work. Well, you paid for that car. You paid for that horse. Well, you paid for that Black person. So you're going to try to make sure it's maintained to the point where it's not certainly well taken care of, but enough to go day to day. Well, under convict leasing, after slavery supposedly ended, you didn't have to worry about it because now I didn't pay for Michael Cord. I'm leasing Michael Cord. So I can whip him to death if I want. And if he dies, so be it. I get another one to replace him. So if you think slavery was horrific, and it was more horrific than you can imagine, convict leasing, which the 13th Amendment created, and which today we look at mass incarceration, which came out of that. So when we talk about the whole issue of enslavement and how Black people were treated and how red people had their land taken away from them and how brown people had their country taken away from them, that's how we have New Mexico and much of the Southwest. So now America comes along, they take the land of the brown people, Spanish-speaking people, and I say, well, yeah, we took your land, but you can't come back. And here we are way much later in 2025, and they're going from house to house, from hood to hood, and snatching people up like the Nazis did to the Jews in Germany. Same type of thing. And that's why I call the ICE so-called law enforcement personnel Nazis, because they have that same type of behavior. And fortunately, you have some governors in the country and some mayors in the country and some DAs in the country and some sheriffs in the country who say, no, we're not going to allow that. We took an oath to uphold the United States Constitution. We took an oath to uphold the Pennsylvania Constitution. We're going to make sure that everybody's treated fairly. And that's why I wanted to have Sheriff Rochelle Bilal on so she could talk to you about what she said recently and what she meant recently, and why we all must rally around the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. So she'll be coming up shortly. And then once we finish that powerful interview, at around 4 p.m. in about 20 minutes, we're going to have the Right Reverend Carolyn Cavaness, who is the first Black female pastor of the great and historic Mother Bethel AME Church. So keep your dial locked. But before we get to them, and again, first up will be Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. I want to make sure that I squeeze in some important information because I don't want to interrupt these two sisters when they get going. So in regard to what ICE is doing, I encourage you all to reach out to an organization that's called Up Against the Law Legal Collective. And Up Against the Law Legal Collective is actually a group of Philadelphia-based volunteers that support activists. They're basically like kind of official or unofficial, I should say, legal observers. The woman who was murdered by ICE a few days ago, she was a legal observer, and she was murdered by ICE. Well, we have the group here in Philadelphia, Up Against the Law Legal Collective, that tells you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. I'm going to talk more about them later in today's show, but right now, jot it down. It's called Up Against the Law Legal Collective. That's Up Against the Law Legal Collective. And let me give you their website, which has so much important information that you need to be aware of. That's Up Against the Law Legal Collective. You can go to their website at upagainstthelaw.org. That's upagainstthelaw.org. Once again, upagainstthelaw.org. Or if you want, you can call the group, and our producer, engineer extraordinaire, Roland, put it up on the screen, upagainstthelaw.org. That group is the go-to group when we want to know how to protest. And if you get arrested in connection with the protest, how you can get free legal assistance. I and about 25, 30 other attorneys here in Philadelphia volunteer with the Up Against the Law Legal Collective, and they contact us, and we do pro bono representation. So if you're out there doing the right thing, protesting legally and lawfully and doing what you should do in the interest of justice, we'll be there for you. You saw that website, upagainstthelaw.org. Here's the phone number, 848-758-0388. That's 848-758-0388. Now, I know folks are scrambling to get their pens and pads out, their cell phones. That number again for Up Against the Law Legal Collective, 484. I tell you, our producer is so thorough, and he's better than I am because he has the number there that I said wrong. I should have said it correctly. I'm going to say it correctly now and slow down. It's actually 484. That's 484-758-0388. I really appreciate our producer. That's 484-758-0388. And it's important that you contact that organization, Up Against the Law Legal Collective, at 484-758-0388, or that you go to their website, because people who are interested in justice, and again, our producer is so thorough, that number's up there correctly. I said it wrong the first time. He has it right. 484-758-0388. We encourage you to call that organization, go to its website, because in the same way that I look back 200, 300 years ago and say, why didn't more people, white people, fight against slavery? They could have done something. Well, here we are in 2025 looking at the quote unquote enslavement of our brown brothers and sisters, our Spanish speaking brothers and sisters. And 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and say, what did you do to fight for the rights of folks here in America, here in Pennsylvania, and here in Philadelphia? And having mentioned Philadelphia, let's go to our first guest, and I'm going to say a few words about her before she begins to speak, but it's the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. And just so folks know, she is not new to this. First of all, she was elected twice by overwhelming numbers. When she ran in the 2019 primary, she won with nearly 42% of the vote compared to her opponent with only 27% of the vote. She went on to the general election in 2019 and got 99.8% of the vote. That tells you how powerful she is and how much the folks here in Philadelphia appreciate her. She then went on to get reelected in 2023 by overwhelming numbers and got about 200,000 votes. In addition, Sheriff Rochelle Bilal is the first, I repeat, the first African-American woman in 343-year history of the sheriff's office here in Philadelphia. And when I say she's not new to this, she had been a law enforcement official, a police officer for 27 years, and a community activist as the secretary of the Philadelphia NAACP. Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, how are you today?
How are you, Mr. Cord, Michael Cord?
And Sheriff Bilal might be frozen. We can see her, but
Can
we
you?
don't seem to have.
You can't hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. I can. I'm
Okay.
doing very, very well. I know you're very busy. We want to thank you for taking a few minutes. Yeah, but it looks like you might have a bad connection because I see the screen just went black. But we're going to see if we can reconnect you. I think the best thing is when we have this problem, we will ask the guest to hang up the connection and then log back on. And that way we might be able to get a better connection. But it appears that you might be in a bad place and the reception is not good. Okay, we got you right there. We can see you. I hope that we're able to hear you within the next few seconds.
Can you hear me now?
We'll try to make the connection. And it appears that I might be having that same problem. So let me just say this while we're getting everything. I can hear you now. So Sheriff Bilal, I'm not sure what's going on with the connection, but tell us what happened recently, what your statement was publicly, and whether or not there was some pushback. I'll turn it over to you.
First of all, there's a lot of pushback from the MAGA group of people because now I'm receiving all kinds of threats. But first of all, I'm not new to this because if you remember, I shut down the police website Dome Lights that was spitting off racist stuff about our black people and our black children, and I was threatened then. And I told them then, I'm not scared of none of this. None of this. I stood with Larry Krasner because we do not support ICE in our city. And Larry Krasner said he'll lock them up if they commit a crime. And I said we will not let them whisk anybody away that commit a crime. They will get arrested, and then they will be prosecuted by the district attorney's office. And these little MAGA people act like I'm scared of them. I'm not scared of them. Bring it. I'm a law enforcement professional.
We're having some serious technological problems, and it's probably a situation regarding the reception. But Sheriff Bilal, let's do this. We're going to cut off the video portion and just have you do it by audio. So we're going to make sure if you can log back on, what we'll try to do is to have our producer have you on audio, and through audio, we can hear you. We might not be able to see you, but the advantage of the audio is that we can hear what you're saying because the reception is really bad right now. So if you can just hang up right now, I'm going to make sure that the producer contacts you. He's going to give you a call in just a couple seconds. And when he gives you a call, he'll give you a number to call, or he'll put you on directly, because we really, really, really want to hear what you have to say, because what you have to say is critically important. So right now, I'm actually sending your phone number to our producer, and he'll make sure that we do this audio, because we have to, I repeat, we have to hear what you have to say. For folks who don't know what we're talking about, and we have an excellent, I repeat, an excellent producer in Roland, producer and engineer. So he's going to make sure that he gets this hooked up so we can hear from Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. And we're going to do that in just a couple seconds. So Roland's going to give me a heads up as when we have her on the line. And then when we have her on the line, we'll make sure that we can talk to her, because we want to hear from her. As soon as he lets me know, we'll do an audio as opposed to the video. And that way we can hear her as opposed to seeing her, because on my screen, it kept freezing up. I couldn't see her actually talking. I could see an image of her.
1, 2, 3.
Yes, we're good. 1, 2, 3. We're good. Sheriff Bilal, please start at the beginning so folks can know where things stand. Go ahead.
First of all, we did a press conference. Larry had a press conference, and it's everybody that was there is standing against these ICE MAGA people coming into the cities. And we
Yes.
were talking about the situation that happened in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
and basically on how the female got killed.
Yep.
Miss Good,
Mm-hmm.
that got killed there. And so we were basically saying that Larry said he will lock them up
Yep.
if they come in Philadelphia and commit a crime. And I said, you won't be able to be whisked away so they can't identify you.
Mm,
And that
mm,
we will, when you do your dirt there, then we will lock you up and you won't be able to go hide.
mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
also stood up that law enforcement professionals that are doing their job right
Yes.
are
Yes.
not masked up.
Great point.
They
Great
don't
point.
wear masks to go out there and do their job because they're doing it right and they're doing it according to the law. That these little cowards that come in our cities, and want to be masked up, that means they cowards and they're trying to hide their
mm,
identity. I
mm,
also stated that this these people coming into our city masked up, trying not to be identified.
mm-hmm.
Maybe some of them, those Proud Boys and those people that did the
Great
insurrection,
point.
because they don't
Great
want to
point.
show their face because they know we got pictures of them.
That's an excellent point. Let me say this, Sheriff, before you go on. You don't seem to be intimidated by this. You seem to be as strong as you were from the very beginning. Why is that?
Because I ain't scared of them. You do not scare us. You may be
mm,
trying to do all the things in all these cities around the country, but there are people here and everywhere else that are not scared. These protesters out there protesting against ICE, they're not scared either. And so
mm,
if it calls for us to be, this is the modern day rebellion
I
against
love it.
this MAGA situation that's trying to happen in our country. There's no kings. You're not going to just
Mm,
do what you want here. There
mm,
are laws, and you're going to abide by the laws. I'm a law enforcement professional. And
mm-hmm,
so, therefore, when I say we are not scared of you, you're not going to come in here and do what you want to do to the people of this city. And we mean that. No, I'm
mm-hmm.
not intimidated about them. They on social media with their
Yep.
threats.
Yep.
I say, bring it.
Ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this interview, you're listening to the voice of the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. And when I say she's the people's candidate, the numbers prove it. When she ran for election in 2019, in the general election, she got 99.8% of the vote after winning the primary, about 42% to 27%. If you think that's impressive, let's fast forward to when she was reelected in 2023. In the general election, she got nearly 200,000 votes. So the people support her because they know who she is. She spent almost 30 years as a Philadelphia police officer, then served as a secretary of the Philadelphia NAACP. So when she says she's not scared and she's not new to this, she is not. Sheriff, I know you got a lot of stuff to do. We want to thank you for spending time, but I want to give you the final minute or 2 minutes. What do you want to say to the listening audience and the viewing audience about what you said publicly and what you're going to continue to do? I'll give you the final word.
I'm going to continue to stand that we, the sheriff office, is not cooperating with no
Mm,
ICE MAGA
mm,
crap that comes in this city.
wow.
We don't want them here. And we stand with Minneapolis and all the other cities, Chicago, about
Mm-hmm.
these ICE
Mm-hmm.
agents coming in here to do what they're due. We not having it. Second, you can
Mm-hmm.
call my office and
Yes.
threaten me. You can go
Mm-hmm.
email and threaten me. You can do all of that. That's not going to shut me down. That's not going to shut me up because I stand on right and doing the right thing.
When you say it's not going to shut you down or shut you up, this is proof. A lot of times when people get the quote unquote pushback that you might have been getting, they kind of fade into the background. You're standing up even taller and stronger. We appreciate this. I know I said that was the final word, but I got to tell you, Sheriff, you're on such a roll. Is there anything else you want to add before we end this interview? Because I was always impressed with you in my role in the Philadelphia Tribune and WRD. I endorsed you because I know your history and what you've done for our community, and not just for the African American community, for the city and county of Philadelphia. And it's really interesting because people like you, they say heavy is the head that wears the crown. Here you are trying to do the right thing. You got some activists who I have to tell you were kind of confused and saw you as the enemy, and now they see you standing strong. I'll give you the final word once again because you're on such a roll. Go ahead, Sheriff.
I say, everybody stand strong. Don't let these people scare you from being who you are and true to yourself, and to help everybody else keep your city safe and straight from these MAGA nuts that trying to come and take over our country. No, We're not going to let a criminal in the White House shut us up. We're not having it.
You heard it straight from the first African American woman sheriff in the 343-year history of the sheriff's office. Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, please be safe, take care of yourself, and thank you for what you do for the city and county of Philadelphia.
Thank you too, the angriest black man in America. I appreciate you too.
very, very well said. Folks, we struggled early on to try to get her on. We had some technological problems, but thanks to her diligence and persistence, and thanks to the skill of our producer, our engineer, Roland, we got it in. You heard it here first. After the quote unquote kind of sort of backlash she got from standing tall, she now is standing even taller. And we say, and she says, she ain't scared. She ain't scared. That was the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. In about 4 minutes or so, we're going to shift gears and talk to the Right Reverend Carolyn Cavaness of Mother Bethel AME here in Philadelphia. But before we do that, folks, let me squeeze in about 2 or 3 minutes of information I want to share with you before we hear from the Reverend in about 2 or 3 minutes. I already shared with the information about the Up Against the Law Legal Collective. So if you're a protester, if you're a demonstrator, if you're an activist and you want to do the right thing, and you need to make sure that the right thing includes you knowing what you should do as a protester, what you shouldn't do. And if you happen to get arrested, there are free, I repeat, free/pro bono attorneys available to represent you. But it all comes through a group called the Up Against the Law Legal Collective. That's the Up Against the Law Legal Collective. You can contact them first by going to the website. The website is upagainstthelaw.org. That's upagainstthelaw.org. Or you can call them at 484-758-0388. That's 484-758-0388. You know, this is a wonderful thing when you have young, angry, progressive activists on the street fighting for justice. And then you have middle-aged, powerful elected officials in their offices also fighting for justice. I can't tell you in the history of Philadelphia when that ever happened. It's usually the activist on one side, elected official on the other side. But we both sides see the threat to American democracy in the form of the guy in the White House. So the activists have come together to raise hell on the streets. The elected officials have come together to raise issues in their offices. And they came together and are fighting the good fight, but not just fighting the good fight, they're winning the good fight. So big shout out to the progressive activists on the streets, and a big shout out to elected officials like Sheriff Rochelle Bilal doing what needs to be done in and through their office. Well done. They both are seeking justice. They both are fighting for justice. And eventually, they both will win the battle for justice. Because the young folks ain't scared. And you just heard from Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. She clearly ain't scared. As I said, usually when elected officials get some type of criticism publicly, they kind of backtrack and back off. She didn't backtrack. She didn't back off. She's out there bigger and better and stronger. Big shout out to the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. Well done. Very well done. So I got that part in, Up Against the Law Legal Collective. Very quickly, before we hear from the Reverend, there's a group I'm a part of called ATTAC, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. That's ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And that group, and again, thanks to our producer, Roland, you can get more information by going to our website, which is avengingtheancestors.com. It's a long story. I'm going to squeeze in a 2-hour story in 2 minutes. It goes like this. Back in 2002, we found out that America's first White House was right here in Philadelphia when George Washington was the president here in Philly from 1790 to 1797. People say, okay, that might be fascinating. Philadelphia's had the first White House and George Washington was here in 1790. That's a great thing. Yeah, that might seem to be a great thing. But if you dig beneath the surface, you find out that it wasn't a great thing because he enslaved black men, black women, and black children right here in Philadelphia. Many of us knew he enslaved 316 at his Mount Vernon, Virginia plantation, but many didn't know that he enslaved 9 of those 316 right here in Philadelphia. So based on us finding out about that in 2002, we formed this group called ATTAC. ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. We fought for 8 years to make sure that the site, which was being constructed at 6th and Market, wouldn't just talk about George Washington, but instead talk about the enslavement of Black people at that site. We fought that battle from 2002 to 2010. And on December 15, 2010, we won that battle. And we won that battle with the grand opening of the first, I repeat, the first slavery memorial of its kind on federal property in the history of the United States of America. And everything was great until it wasn't. And it wasn't when that guy was elected in November of 2024. It wasn't when he was sworn in, inaugurated in January of 2025. And when he was sworn in January of 2025, he issued dozens and dozens of executive orders. And every single one of those executive orders that pertained to Black people was anti-Black and was racist. Let's fast forward from January 2025 to March of 2025, when he said, it's the guy in the White House, said, hey, I'm looking around at these federal historical sites all across the country, and I don't like what I'm saying because they're not white enough. They're including too much about this Black stuff, about slavery and all of that stuff. We don't want that. That was in March of 2025 when the guy in the White House announced that through an executive order. Fast forward from March to May, he had his Interior Department Secretary, a guy by the name of Doug Burgum, to specifically target Philadelphia. And in targeting Philadelphia, he set forth a deadline, which was September 17 of 2025 to potentially shut down the site. But we fought the good fight, and we're winning the good fight. We're going to talk more about that fight after we hear from our guests. I promised you that we would have a guest on. We have some really important information to share, and we're going to bring her up now. And let me just introduce her to those of you who don't know who she is and what she does, but she's actually a historic individual. It's actually the Right Reverend Carolyn C. Cavaness, who's a distinguished minister and activist, and is the pastor of Mother Bethel AME Church here in Philadelphia, and is the first, I repeat, the first woman pastor in the 237-year history of the church. A native of Newark, New Jersey, she was formerly the pastor of Bethel AME Church of Ardmore, and by the way, made history there by being the first woman in the church's 120-year history. Because we only have 30 minutes left, I got to make sure I get her in, because I can spend the next hour and a half singing her praises and talking about the great stuff she's done, because she's actually history in person. Without further ado, the Right Reverend Carolyn Cavaness. How are you today?
I'm good. How's it going? Happy Friday.
That's an understatement. You're great, because you are always doing the right thing, and we appreciate you. I want to talk to you in particular about what's coming up in connection with the Freedom School class closing ceremony on January 24. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about you. And I know you're humble, I know you're modest, but I want you to kind of fill in the blanks to let folks know what you do day to day before we get to the closing ceremony.
Well, thank you again, Attorney Cord, for having me. And it's always a pleasure to be in your presence. And thank you for the gift and the freedom fighter that you are. Certainly for your devotion and diligence and just getting it done and keeping and pressing, if you were keeping the foot to the pedal. So I am blessed to serve as the 53rd pastor of Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, which sits on the oldest parcel of land continuously owned by African Americans, not only in the city of Philadelphia, but in United States of America. And so I am blessed to serve as her pastor and first female pastor. And certainly as we are in this, I would say this very precarious season of erasure, attempted erasure, and this attack on anything Black and anything of African descent, to be at the helm of this treasure, not only to, Black Christianity, but certainly to, as it relates to Black social movements, as it relates to, Black genius and Black innovation. And so to be at this converging point and at the helm, I am deeply humbled and deeply privileged to be of service to this congregation, this community, and certainly beyond. So that's a little bit about me. I'm from Brick City, Newark, New Jersey, and very much committed to the work of faith and the public square, and how I know firsthand the impact of not only a religious institution being a place where I learn Bible, but also how do I embody her principles? How do I walk this faith? How do I show? How do I help to pay forward? How do I build upon? Certainly, the great history. What is my contribution within my generation to the legacy and to what, in particular, an institution such as Mother Bethel AME Church stands for?
I really appreciate the way you broke it down and made it plain. Over my right shoulder is a portrait of Malcolm X, and he said many profound things, none more profound than make it plain. And you just made it plain in less than 2 minutes. And we appreciate you breaking it down like that. So now that we know who you are and what you do, before we get to the event coming up, why are you an activist as well? Because many people figure that, hey, you're either going to be a pastor or you're going to be an activist, but you can't be both. Both. How are you doing both?
First of all, I can't help but do both, because in order for me to, if you will, minister and preach to my congregation, to those that I'm put in front of or who desire to come and to hear, I have to be I have to be in tune with the lived reality. These worlds are not disconnected. I cannot talk about the Beatitudes and here is somebody trying to figure out how are they going to make ends meet. How do you handle the trauma of violence seen or experienced? And that is not detached. Where is God in all of this madness? Where is God in the midst of, person just trying to be a law, to be an observer, and here her life is taken. So there's no way. And so even as I'm, preparing for messages that I have to give this weekend, what is taking place in our world, people are coming with that burden. People are trying to make sense and also trying to find, as much as there is bleakness and there is darkness, how do I also bring hope? How do I bring assurance? How do I still show that Black joy is still a real thing, and that within community? And so that's why, one of the pieces, as an activist, as, a person who doesn't mind speaking out, how do I give voice to what someone may not have, may not have the platform, right? May not have the wherewithal to string it all together. But here I have been blessed, and here I've been placed in opportunity. And so I'm not here just for myself, right? I am here to uplift. I'm here to bring together. I'm here also to show that even in the midst of all of this craziness, and that's why I really pay homage to Richard Allen and the Black founding fathers, because in the midst of, if you will, an institution that was attempting to do democracy or writing about it, here was a manifestation, the genius of showing how democracy can work and should work, and that this would be located, not too far from where where these halls, right, are adorned. And so this work for me is not, it's all together. It's interlocked. You cannot detach. You cannot attempt to say that one does not inform the other, because it does. And that also, that to me, that it provides a level of a moral compass, a way in which to, the North Star, what we should be forging towards, what we should be working towards, what is the crescendo, how do we bring this all to the summit, to bring it all together. So that's why, and I appreciate you're calling me or finding me to be an activist. So I appreciate, your that identification that you have found in me. So I really appreciate that, Attorney Court.
Well, we appreciate all that you do. I noticed that we were having some technological problems, and it's obviously on my end. We had Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. We're having some problems. What we're going to do now, Reverend, if you don't mind, we're going to disconnect the Skype, I'm sorry, not Skype, it's actually StreamYard. Maybe Skype might have worked better, but it's StreamYard. So we're going to disconnect this, and my producer getting ready to call you now so we can do an audio interview, because we want to make sure that we can hear everything. We heard most of it, but it was choppy. So you can disconnect on your end. He'll give you a call, and we'll continue this. Folks, we're listening to and watching, to the extent that we can, the Right Reverend Carolyn Cavaness, who's the pastor, the first woman pastor of Mother Bethel AME. And we're going to have her back on in just a couple seconds by way of audio, and that way we can hear the powerful messaging from this powerful pastor, because there's an event coming up on January 24, and we want to make sure that people know about it so they can show up in droves to make sure that they support this Freedom School class closing ceremony taking place on Saturday, January 24. I'm going to allow the Right Reverend to spend more time talking about it. But before she does that, let me go into a little more detail about her background. Really not detail, but I'm so impressed with her background. Before we get her back up in the next couple seconds, we were talking to, and we'll continue to talk to, the Right Reverend Carolyn C. Cavaness, who's a distinguished minister and an activist. And as I pointed out, the pastor of historic Mother Bethel AME Church in Philadelphia. She's the first woman pastor in the 237-year history of the church. She's a native of Newark, New Jersey, and was formerly the pastor of Bethel AME Church of Ardmore. And there, she was the first woman in the church's 120-year history. So I got to tell you, folks, we need to make sure we hear exactly what she's saying, because she is saying something that's critically important. So we're going to see if we have her on the line. If we do, my producer will let us know, because she has some important information to share about this upcoming event. And by the way, folks, the pastor was with me. I was talking earlier about the attack organization, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition. And in connection with the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, every time we reach out to Reverend Carolyn Cavaness, she always shows up. And then not just shows up, but she helps us to do what we do. We're part of an umbrella organization called the President's House / Slave Memorial that includes attack. And we've had one of our meetings at that historic church, and hopefully we'll have other meetings there. So we have her back on. I'm glad that we have her on the StreamYard, because we much rather see and hear her as opposed to just hear her. So we have her back. So you were on a roll. We heard about 90% of it. So we definitely got the gist of what you were talking about. Now we want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about an event coming up. Tell us about that.
Certainly. So we during, let's see, about 3-4 months ago, we were selected to partner with ASALA, so the Association for the Study of African American, the organization founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And we were selected one amongst, I think, 8 other institutions to be a freedom school. And we have been convening since October, 2 or 3 Saturdays a month, and charting and learning, and also deep reflection and engaging around our history. We have made this somewhat of a nomadic journey, as we have been journeying through various sites throughout the city. And so we'll be bringing this 10-week course to a close on Saturday, January the 24th. And we will close it, if you will, bringing it together around lifting up the reality of Philadelphia Black history, if you will, in the modern era. And we've asked attorney Michael Cord to be one of our keynotes, as well as Dr. Ronaldo Anderson of Temple University around Afrofuturism. So how do we think about and dream into the future as a people? And in addition, we are going to have a Sankofa Festival, where we are asking institutions, Black institutions and organizations to come out, to vend, to share resources, information, again, because the story of knowing and being informed of our history, both lived and historical, that it's important that we connect with the institutions who are really helping to keep this history alive and well, and also that it's right here amongst us. So we don't have to, no offense, to the Smithsonian, DC, but right here in Philadelphia, in our backyards, we have amazing museums, institutions, organizations that are mobilizing us, that are teaching us, and that need our support and need our attention, and also to be for them to be on our radar.
You know, this is great hearing you break it down the way you're breaking it down. I must admit, when I think about freedom schools, I'm thinking about what took place in the South in the 40s and 50s, and the fact that there's something going on that continues that legacy today is critically important. So give us the details about the event coming up on the 24th. What time,
Certainly.
where, and contact information.
Certainly. So we'll be here at Mother Bethel, 419 South 6, so 6th and Lombard, beginning at 9 a.m. We'll have a great breakfast, and then we'll go right into we'll have some reflections from our students about their journey, and then we will hear from Attorney Cord, and then followed by Dr. Anderson, and then by noon, we will have our Sankofa Festival. So we'll have food, and the different institutions will be present. African drums will be going. Also, the Richard Allen Museum will be open. So again, just a day and afternoon. All are welcome as we celebrate our first class of students who will be graduating, if you will. But also that the journey continues. And so we are looking to continue this journey because it is so critical in light of what is happening around us, that we are teaching our history, and that we are engaging with also, public historians and even, academics right here in our neighborhood. And that was one of the challenges that I really appreciated through this, was that we didn't have to look too far, that right here, I mean, Philadelphia is a historic city, and it's a historic Black city. And so how do we esteem, how do we come to know, how do we interact, how do we engage, and how do we give our resources, right? How do we give our ear to, but also that if we don't teach our history, who will? Who will call the names of Francis Ellen Watkins Harper? Who will call the names of William Still? Who will call the names of Absalom Richard? Who will call the names of Stephen Smith? Caroline LeCount, right? This is us. This is our responsibility to do that. And so that's what this experience, and it's really been, it's a lot of hope here, and it's been intergenerational. So we've had grandmothers bringing their children. We've had aunties bringing their nieces and nephews, so, and that we're all, leaving out with something new and some new insight, which in turn should inform and even having more of a passion for who we are. And you can't know who you are if you don't know, if you have not been informed. And so that's the other, sort of certainly a great takeaway from this as well.
Are you surprised that the young folks who are going through these freedom school classes are interested and not bored by it, not turned off by it, doesn't view it as something old and corny? How do you explain that?
That has been very, we're in, for all of the information, quote unquote, that is around us, there is something to be said about the search for truth and authenticity. And as we are able to show and to demonstrate and to put before what we call, within historic circles, primary sources. Right? So to be able to put in front of our people a primary source, that here is a piece of paper, or here is an object from the Revolutionary period, and I also say to folks, as you're even going through your own homes, what primary sources, whose birth certificates do you have? What pictures do you have? And you can't throw that stuff away. You need to hold on to it. You need to know the story behind it. You need to try to figure out, like my grandmother loved pictures, and she was notorious for putting on the back of the picture where it was and the date and who was in it.
So she was actually documenting like an academic. Wow.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And that is critical, because again, we have to hold our story. There is no one but for those artifacts, those pictures, even the family Bible, right? That is an artifact.
Yes.
I had a person the
Yes.
other day, like there was a Bible someone had or somebody else. She's like, can I please get that? Because it had her family lineage in it. I mean, it was all okay. So it is critical, and that there are gaps. Even I think about it. And one of the pieces, even we did a night on Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, and one of our members, was a very prominent scholar. She said, Reverend, her name was not in the anthology. When we think about Black women modern time, she's like, her name wasn't there. And so even when I think about Zora Neale Hurston, right? We think about, she was, she just was 135 the other day, was her, birthday, so to think that, how these stories have been buried, and how we are liberating, we are bringing them out, and that they resonate, and that their voices still are strong, and are still needed, right? They're, and that it's more than just the suspects. And that's been one of our pieces, especially with this 250th. Our mantra is, celebrating Black excellence from America's beginning. And that is important to uplift the contributions of persons of African descent. And it's just not Richard Allen, Absalom Jones, James Fortin. There are other names that need to be called. Ona Judge's name needs to be called. Hercules needs to be called, right? Chris Shields needs to be called. Those names need and must be called, and to esteem that we have a community of excellence, right? These are persons who built institutions, right? People who built, businesses, and they looked good. They had a cadence about them. They were educated, right? You think about the Institute of Colored Youth, right, which starts right here. I mean, this is the home, the precursor to Cheney. And so to take these moments, and it's like, wow, like this is what we come from, or I am sitting in a place, or I am looking at a book, from the 1700s, what I mean? I'm looking at a deed with a Black person's name on it, what I mean? From the early 1800s, something that somebody wrote. Look at that penmanship. And that was a Black person, so again, I think, I've been, and not only with young people, but even for the elders, and a level of, why did somebody keep this away from me, right? Or why am I just finding out about this now? So that's why I think the work that, even with like the work that you have done, Attorney Court, is so critical, because but for these things just get put under the rug, and it's in our backyards. And so also even for our families, right? And how we, uplift who we are and where we come from, and that if we don't, steward this, who will?
That's a great, great question. I don't know if I should call you professor and start taking notes here, or call you reverend and pass the collection plate. I'm not sure what to do now, because you are really on a roll. I need to make sure that I reach out to you and have you on either my radio show or the TV show periodically, because I just love your passion, your energy, and most of all, your commitment to what you're doing. We've basically run out of time, but this is the TV courtroom, and in many courtroom proceedings, a chance for a closing argument. So I'm going to give you a minute or two or three for your closing argument. Anything you want to add, anything you want to repeat, anything you want to highlight, the microphone and camera are yours. But also, please give us that date, that time, that location once again.
So certainly, again, Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, 6th and Lombard. All are welcome to join us for our Freedom School closing ceremony and Sankofa Festival on Saturday, January the 24th, beginning at 9 o'clock. We will be here through 1 o'clock. All are welcome. I also want to uplift that Black history is just not one time of the year, but it is every day. All of us are living Black history. And we have a responsibility to keep and to tell that story, and to be sure that it is passed down from generation to generation. So that would be my closing argument, and that we are the products of Black history, and that we have a responsibility to continue to sow seeds, that this history continues, and that it is strong, and that it is not forgotten.
I got to tell you, I am so impressed, but I really shouldn't be impressed. That's like watching Michael Jordan score 40 points and say you're impressed. Well, he's supposed to do that. And when I hear your fire and your passion and your knowledge, I shouldn't be impressed because that's what you do. But I got to commend you for doing what you do. I was about to say, based on what you stated, well said. Well, yeah, well said is true, but for you, it's well done because your actions speak even louder than your words. Keep up the great work, and I will see you on the 24th.
You got it. Thank you. Stay well, everybody.
You too. Great stuff from the Right Reverend Carolyn Cavaness. I got to tell you, the sisters were on fire today. You heard from the Honorable Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. You heard from the Right Reverend Carolyn Cavaness, the first female pastor of historic Mother Bethel AME Church. I encourage folks to follow up on what she said about the closing ceremony event coming up. And once again, it's the Mother Bethel AME Church's Freedom School class closing ceremony. Going to take place on Saturday, January 24, beginning at 9 a.m. with a free breakfast. Then at 9:30, we're going to have keynote presentations by yours truly, Attorney Michael Cord, along with Dr. Ronaldo Anderson, who is a professor of Africology and African American Studies at Temple University. So again, that's the Freedom School class closing ceremony, Saturday, January 24, beginning at 9 a.m., then the 9:30 keynote presentations, and from 12 to 1:30, the Sankofa Festival. All are welcome. Mother Bethel AME Church, located at 419 South 6th Street. That's 419 South 6th Street at the corner of 6th and Lombard. Please, I want to see you there. And before we wrap things up in about a minute and a half, again, I want to tell folks that we need you out in the streets. We need you protesting and demonstrating, but we need you to be strategic in your protest, in your demonstrations. So we need you to reach out to the Up Against the Law Legal Collective. That's the Up Against the Law Legal Collective. You can go to the website, upagainstthelaw.org. That's upagainstthelaw.org, or you can call, as Roland indicates on the screen, 484-758-0388. And the final thing I'll say in my final 30 seconds, my group ATTACK, ATAC, Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, we encourage you to come to our next meeting, which will be Monday, February 2 at 6:30 p.m. at Zion Baptist Church, Broad and Venango. Monday, February 2, 6:30 p.m., Zion Baptist Church, Broad and Venango. For more information about ATTACK, email us, atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com. atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com, or call us 215-552-8751. 215-552-8751. We're going to end today's show like I end every show. It goes like this. Think Black. I'm out.